Hi, friends. It's your old pal, host Eric, host of Talking with Famous People. I've got a question from one Rachel Gerrard. If you want to pronounce her last name in the probably least intuitive sense, you don't let anything after the G have an accent syllabically. So her last name is just Gerrard. Anyway, she says, "How do we measure overall introvert and extrovert? This guy seems so extroverted to me." Who's this guy? You remember the NTJ couple typing session? There's an INTJ guy and an ENTJ lady. And by any colloquial understanding of the terms introvert and extrovert, any sane person watching those two videos will conclude that the guy must be the extrovert. He talks way more than. He's more interested in occupying the talking space than she is, okay? But I have no doubt whatsoever that he's the introvert and she's the extrovert. So, my answer to her question initially here is we don't measure those things, overall introvert, extrovert, for the same reason we don't measure overall sensoriness. Extrovert and introvert are hold on, don't leave. Extrovert and introvert aren't meaningful distinctions because TE-DOMs, NE-DOMs, SE-DOMs, and FE-DOMs are all extroverts but don't appear to third parties to be equally extroverted. So, she says, "Thank you, but what exactly does it mean to be extroverted? I heard it described as you prefer to be around people than alone, but I'm not sure. Would a layperson be able to tell an introvert from an extrovert just by interacting and observing with them?" Well, the answer to this question is extroverted doesn't really mean anything specific. It just means, as we use it in typology, that your dominant function is an extroverted function. A TE Dom is a very different form of an extrovert than an FE Dom. They are both interfacing with the external world. In other words, their fundamental frame of reference relates to how system engagement produces outcomes, one way or the other. But the the elephant made out of poop in the room. There, I finally made that go away. Is that will be revealed shortly as I go through this thing here. Pew. So here's things that people say about extroverts and introverts. Extroverts are active, hearty. They like variety, the outer world, expressive. They speak as they think. They're social. Extroverted intuitors speak as they think. Okay? That's not necessarily true of extroverted thinkers. It's not necessarily true of extroverted feelers. It's not necessarily true of extroverted sensors. Although they too are likely to not think things out ahead of time. Like if you're dealing with an ESTP, for example, they're not going to think about exactly what they're going to say in full before they say it. However, it's a very different kind of speak as they think than an ENTP, for example, who's generative rather than simply reactive ideationally. Are extroverts necessarily more expressive than introverts? Not in any sense of the word that means anything. So, does that mean that all artists who are prolific in their production are extroverts? It's not the case. If you get an INTP to write a book, for example, you might get Robert Persic's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is like 900 pages long. That guy was very busy expressing himself in ways that publicly engage the world. It's just he was writing rather than saying it out loud, because who could listen to a 900-page book being spoken aloud in one sitting? Nobody. Social. It is not necessarily the case that extroverts are social. I'm not particularly social much of the time. The reason, like, okay, I'm working on a couple audio things right now. The first of them was 100,000 million years ago. Then Jonathan Basanti, an introvert who talks a fair amount, sent me a alternate baseline of the one I was using, which I didn't like the thing I was using it for, but which I thought had a cool couple of loops in it that I did like. So then I spent a shit ton of time last night by myself without engaging with any other human being. And what I was doing is freestyling, like, rap singing parts over it. And you can see, oh, you can't see. Let me put it up on the screen. So, if you are an extrovert like me, in this instance, I was being expressive. I was definitely rapping as I thought, not beforehand, but I was being very antisocial. I don't want to engage with anybody because I'm busy doing this. And as you can see, there's a lot of expression here. Keep in mind, this is post edit. Each of these things from time waste down to the bottom was originally all audio. I went through and then listened to them and deleted everything that was not, that didn't make cut. And I went through and did another cut. And I still have more cutting to do before I went to sleep. So if you want to be an extrovert in certain kinds of ways, it requires you to be isolated for long periods of time. This is why we don't use these terms really to mean things, because they contain implicit contradictions. I'm extremely measured depending on certain kinds of things that I'm doing, right? You will not hear me start making arguments willy-nilly until I've fully thought them out. They're fully measured. I won't make big claims that I can't substantiate until I've thought about it a lot. So I'm thinking then speaking. But I am definitely not an introvert. It's just a matter of what kind of things I'm thinking and speaking about. If I'm talking about cognitive functions and I'm considering making a claim that test meow links strongly to function meow, it's going to be a while before you hear it come out of my mouth. I'm going to check it in multiple ways first before it comes out of my mouth, because I'm avoiding being wrong in the same way that an FI tool user is avoiding feeling regret. FOMO is the ultimate FI tool thing. Fear of missing out, fear of feeling regret that you didn't accomplish something. So this is, and for me it's like fear of, I don't know what you'd call it, but like fear of, oh my God, did I just spend 4 hours doing this? Why? What am I doing? What am I doing? This is what I'm working on? MC rhyming so tough, like a DJ playing a record behind him, spinning it around so that he can have a vision that can make you round and around in the time household. Or 23, 26, 27, 31, 32, 35. Maybe you're into your 40s, 46, 47, 48, 49. The point is, you're probably younger than me, because I'm a one full fist of teeth. That's the half a century, G. I was born in 1971, before thee was ever a twinkle in thine father's eye. I might as well just get rid of this entirely, because it's garbage. But it takes me a few listens to get to determine it's garbage. One of these things I was pretty happy with. I guess this one maybe? This is a little off topic, isn't it? This is me being an extrovert, right? So am I being socially graceful here? No. Am I being expressive? Yes. Am I engaging with people socially? Not really. I'm avoiding that by not live streaming and just putting up a video. Is this measured? Well, I know exactly what I'm going to say about the introvert extrovert shit before I started, but I didn't know I was going to go off on this little tangent here. I shit you not, my vision is clear, or was when I began this project here, and chances near to zero that you'll ever hear this, because I'm no hero, and this to a general overarching theme, I guess, but it was clear. A vision, clear. I'm 50 years old, a half a century. That makes me considerably older than thee, probably, and thine. You were not even a twinkle in your father's eye when I was born. You're probably 22 or 23 or 24. Maybe 35 or 34 or 32. Maybe 42 or 46 or 47, 45, 44, 31, 29. It doesn't really matter if mine age, that is to say 50, is older than thine, that is to say 49 or below. I've got a story I'd like to tell, important stuff, but oh well, I guess I'd rather freestyle because I'm not getting to it, just all the disclaimer and I'm not getting through it. So look here at the Ambivert scale, personality continuum whale. This is complete bullshit. See, it pretends that though percentage of functions are extroverted or introverted is sometimes 50% or 25% or something. This is all bullshit, this Ambivert stuff. Okay, look. A person is two functions, number one and number two. Then the first one comprises the frame, while the second one is the tool you use, Jane, within the capacity of its frame. That is to say, I won't do something lame unless I'm making a mistake, because lameness is countervalued by me. Because, in other words, it's important that you think I'm super clever and wise and cool and drink with me and have fun, have a good time, and say, Eric's really nice, you should meet him sometime. Those things are important because FE is my third slot valued function. Absolutely, it's an absolute value to me for others to think that I'm so wee fun and clever and exciting. Capable of extroverting writing, even though it's not written down ahead of time. It's just freestyle like this is now because why I'm an extroverted intuitor. This form of extroversion is different than extroverted feeling. An extroverted feeler would not do that right there because it plays as showing off. Are they therefore less extroverted than me? No. An extroverted thinker wouldn't do that right then because that has no purpose. Except unless you're trying to show off or something, right? An extroverted sensor wouldn't do that right then because why make it more difficult than it naturally is to express conceptually what you're trying to say? Why say so much stuff without actually talking directly about the thing yet? You know. So now let's look at the next picture. Common signs of extroverts: energized by socializing. It's not really true. Solve problems through discussion. That's true for me, but it's definitely not true for my dad, who's a TE Dom. You're often described as friendly and approachable. I might be. My dad is definitely not, and he's definitely a TE Dom. Nobody would mistake my dad for friendly or approachable. Open and willing to share. Again, I am those things. I am very open and willing to share. My father is not particularly. Even FE Doms are not particularly open and willing to share because they're very concerned with managing your perception, so they're not necessarily very open. They're very willing to share about which they are open. Love to talk. That's most true of extroverted intuitors. FE Doms, if they're ENFJs, they're more likely to be very talkative than ESFJs, who are more likely to engage in lots of conversations, but to manage the conversational space in terms of who has the floor quite reciprocally with the respect to people. They aren't likely to be the person who's accused of talking too much. So, and there's this thing. Extroverts like to have the spotlight on them. Introverts like to have their husbands in. Extrovert. It's not the case that extroverts necessarily want the spotlight on them. I do, because I'm a talker for whom spotlight put on me is an absolute value. But if you are, let's say, SE first slot and TE third slot, then you probably want the spotlight on you too. This is generally true, I guess. The spotlight headphones thing, I guess, is generally true. I've heard people go, ENTPs are the least extroverted extrovert, or the most introverted extrovert or something, because of what I just showed you with the audacity thing. The little bit of interaction with me that you see about that represents a tiny fraction of the amount of attention paid involving that whole thing right there. It's been hours just freestyling. Why? Because it was fun. I couldn't stop. It was a lot of fun. And it's like, you can think of freestyling as like boxing. And you gotta kind of, once you get your bounce going and your feet are moving right, all of a sudden you're floating like a butterfly and stinging like a bee, and it feels good. Like, it feels good. Like surfing must feel good to somebody who thinks surfing feels good. It feels good like people who like jogging must have an equivalent feeling about jogging or something. I have an equivalent feeling sometimes about playing a song that I know well and I'm really familiar with. And it's weird, you would say, well, how would you have a same feeling, you feel like you're doing the same thing, experiencing the same goodness, when you are freestyling all new stuff, and when you're freestyling none of it? The answer is because NE and SI are linked like that. In either case, I'm in a state of flow in which what I know by SI is in harmony with my capacity to deviate from it, one way or the other. If only you could see. Only you could know. If only you could hear the many hours of flow I've already attempted. Non-stop freestyling, and every single failure, again. I should know better by now. I can't just make it all up on the fly and have it come out exactly like I want it to. Why? Because I'm not composing it, I'm making it up on the fly. Like a very stupid guy would. Instead of doing it like I should, I make it up and try to think maybe I can catch lightning in a bottle once, I think, and then I won't have to actually record it properly. I won't have to do the TSC. I won't have to set up all the stuff. I won't have to turn it this way with the pan and the EQ and the CC and the... I'll just... Hey, look at that. Genius. Doesn't work like that, Eric. It's like that was pretty trick, but I'm never going to get something as trick as if I write it out, because I'm not allowing my I was born, I was 0, and now I'm 50 years old. I once was 22, and now I'm 50 years old. What happened to me will happen to you if you are lucky and You just came out of early youth, into middle youth, into late youth. Now you're here, young adulthood, early in your 20s, maybe pushing 30 at most. And you're thinking, hey, have I missed the boat? That's what you're thinking. Have I missed the boat? I can't tell, and that's why I know that I must still be under 44. Because let me tell you, friends, what you'll find when you become the age that I am in time. I'm 50 years old, half a century. I've been alive longer than big trees that aren't very big, because the big trees live longer than 50 years, and that's okay. Geez, don't be so technical about shit. Yeah, stop being so pedantic. It's fair. It's fair for me to ask you to please stop being so goddamn pedantic. No, you shut up. Yeah, this video is not extroverted. No, it's not about that. It seems I began my life oblivious and out of light, hanging in the corners with the darkness. Not a darkness of dismissive, not a darkness something missive, but instead the darkness of ignorance. Imagine this, you grew up when I grew up, when women and men. No, run about of hardship. Anyway, I don't want disease. You don't want either. So get on your knees. I don't want to die of an accident. You don't want either. So don't become a friend. If you don't want to be near me when an accident occurs, then perhaps you'd be included in the outcomes, dying as well. If the accident caused me to, I don't know, fell from a big tall building onto a sharp rock, that would probably kill a person in the dark, especially if it happened at night. Then you couldn't even see when you were about to impact the rock, and it would puncture your heart and your lungs, go straight through your body and into your tongue. And then you'd be dead for sure, and that would be really sad, but that's how it goes, sir. Anyways, enough about that. What were we talking about? How fat I've gotten? I'd like to go to Bob's Fat and Tall store. They don't call it like that for girls, though. They call it Torrid or Lane Bryant instead. Shh, don't say these clothes are for fat girls. That's not okay anymore. You can't say that. Because we respect fat people so much that we can't even say they're fat because it's such a shameful thing, right? Okay, preachy. Eric, Rachel's not happy with this video you made her. She says, Eric, that's a very shitty video on the subject. The point is, extrovert introvert is like distance from ground level, okay? We could articulate, in some sense, an animal's capacity to be distant from ground level. Fish are much more likely to be below sea level, ground level, and birds are much more likely to be above ground level. But there are lots of things that are either fish that are way above, when I say ground level, I mean sea level, fish that are way above sea level in mountain lakes. There are things that are not birds that are way above sea level, like every squirrel in a tree. There are birds who burrow in the ground to lay eggs, and they're below sea level. And depending on your relationship with sea level, really doesn't have anything to do with ground level. It has to do so much as the ecosystem's location relative to the sea. So it's like, yeah, we can talk about that, but it doesn't inform us at all really about the animals. If I tell you this is an animal who has a tendency to be above the ground, then I need clarification. Okay, well, do you mean that no part of them is touching the ground? Or that a very small amount of their total surface area is touching the ground. Because it's true for people that only the bottom of our feet, and if we stand on our tippy toes, less than that, is actually touching the ground. But you would still say we're at ground level. You see how ridiculous the conversation gets or discussion gets, right? The same thing is true introvert and extrovert. We use those terms because colloquially people don't understand that a certain kind of expression of extroversion that they deem to be the meaningful definition of the term is actually just one of multiple possible expressions of how extroverts behave. That introverts as well are often likely to manifest what are generally considered to be extroverted traits, contextually dependent. If I've got an extroverted tool function, such as extroverted feeling, or let's say extroverted thinking, then I'm expecting to interface responsively with a system. For extroverted thinkers, they approach conversations, therefore, like they would real world problems. He's expecting to engage with this system to accomplish the goal he wants. The only way to engage in that system, namely being typed by me, is to talk. So he was using the tool function, showing the engagement part more than displaying the dominant function, as people tend to do. Your tool function is the expression of yourself most as a subject. Concurrently, the ENTJ lady, her frame of reference is interfacing, engaging responsibly with the system, but that's not her tool function. So in that circumstance, she's using her tool function. How does she most display it as a subject, therefore, in that context? As an NI user. And she's saying to her husband, stop, you're giving more answer. You're not being concise enough. You're giving more answer than he needs. She's saying her own answers, in contrast, are concise and specific and responsive. Because she's operating with her tool function in an environment where her tool function looks like that. And he's operating with his tool function in an environment where his tool function plays out like that. Because he's using TE in a context where FE is the right interface function, he is necessarily going to interface in a way that people who are attentive to FE norms are going to view as awkward. I could point to a couple of examples. For example, him sort of jumping in to answer his wife's or his girlfriend's questions for her, that would be considered an FE no-no. His patting her condescendingly on the head, definitely an FE no-no. But, it's like he's interfacing with the system that requires him to interface verbally with the system, and he's still applying a TE frame of reference, though, which is, the reason we're communicating is some attainment solvency thing, not perception management. So he's not doing a very good job of managing our perceptions if one values and says it's important that other people not think you behave condescendingly to your woman or something. I don't think he does behave condescendingly to her. I just think it comes across like that for the reasons that I just articulated. So, that's it. I'm going to have to edit this, I guess, but I don't want to. So maybe I'm just going to throw it up there and put it as a premiere and just be okay with the fact that it's the whole 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'm getting a lot better about my videos and making them good and not just indulging myself. But 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This might be the 1 step back video. Thank you for your comment, Rachel Gerrard. The D and the G are silent. Her name's actually Raw. Anyway, thank you for your commentary, and thank you, important viewer. Remember, this video is made possible by the Corporation for Eric Broadcasting and by viewers like you.